Continue to get reaction with regards to government saying it will study the most probably appeal the ruling from the North Gauteng High Court in Pretoria, declaring level 4 and 3 of the national lockdown regulations unconstitutional and invalid. The court suspended the judgment for 14 days, meaning that level 3 and level 4 regulations anyway remain in force. Members of the National Coronavirus Command Council have been directed to amend and republish the regulations to be in line with the Bill of Rights. We are now joined by Political Analyst Ongama Mtimka to get the sense of what are the political implications following the regulations. Ongama, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Let's start right there. We spoke to John Steenhuisen a short while ago. Their reaction, as the DA, obviously they're happy. They've been a while now saying that they're worried about some of the regulations. Politically, this must sting for the ruling party because legitimacy is what it's all about.
I quite appreciated the changed tone from John Steenhuisen. And I think that this judgment actually shouldn't be seen as the governing party as a setback, because what happens here is that the court, in as much as they lambasted the governing party around the rationality of some of the regulations, they were validating in terms of the right of the state to have chosen the path that it did, especially when you look at, for example, the arguments that the state made that the Disaster Management Act was inadequate in its provisions to allow for a response of this nature. In the judgment, Judge Davis makes reference, for example, to the idea that you can see in the way the the provisions in the Disaster Management Act are phrased, that what is envisaged in there is a disaster situation like a flood or related things, but not the coronavirus. So what I appreciated the most about the judgment is that it shows that the judiciary is not only able to enforce the rule of law, but also is able to appreciate a situational leadership as well as nuance. Because as much as they chastise the state on certain aspects, especially around rationality, the rationality test of the regulations, they are affirming in terms of, the right that the state had to intervene in the manner that it did, even in ways that infringed on some of the rights. Yeah. But they are using the proviso that these needed to be rational. And I think that the ANC government, or even the national, the cabinet or the cabinet member concerned, should read this as an affirming judgment, but which frowns upon some elements which they may choose to either clarify how they are linked to how the means were linked to the objectives that they were trying to achieve, or simply accept that they weren't linked, and then find ways in which to continue to intervene in ways that protect the rights of citizens while also containing the COVID-19 virus.
Yeah, the question then comes in, throughout the morning we've been getting reaction, and earlier this morning I was driving to work on our sister radio station on SAFM, a lot of legalese were saying, look, there's still a lot that the state can take up on appeal on this. Some going as far as saying maybe the judge overreached in some of his findings. What is your take on it having gone through the judgment?
So I do think that the judge in the substantive parts of his case, before getting to the rationality test section, does show a great degree of justifying some of the decisions which he takes later on the basis of law, applicable law, as well as meanings that could legitimately be ascribed to the specific facts that were before him. Obviously, I can never overrule what lawyers have to say, because my discipline is politics. But on the basis of a logically deduced judgments, there's a lot which the judge, and I think this is where for me I'm saying this is also a fair judgment is because the judge applies themselves to what the emerging body of knowledge is about the ways in which to manage the virus, not just in South Africa, but around the world, and locates the actions of the state within that emerging body of knowledge, and then expresses his opinions on the basis of what that emerging body of knowledge has been. And I think I quite appreciated how that has been done as the basis, one, to refuse some of the recourse that was sought by the applicants, but also in certain instances to affirm that, in fact, his views were similar to what they had raised. Yeah. Obviously, the legal fraternity will be able to point out in a much more in-depth way as to how that very application, which I'm actually commending, is flawed. But for me, it seems like everything is based on logic. In the section that deals with the rationality test, there's a sense in which the judge appears colloquial on two instances. And but in general, even in that session, I think for me, he foregrounds his decisions there by this discussion which he raises around the whether the ends justify the means, and also what would constitute rational decisions, the link between the objective as well as what is being prescribed as the actions that are prescribed. And if you look, last one for me on this one, if you look at some of the issues that he falters, some of them arise from relaxation of regulations from level 5. Not necessarily that they were irrational from even during the level 5 time. So it's more comparative. Why do you allow this and you while not allowing that? Yeah. So those, for me, are emergent issues which can be debated. But as far as how the judge reads them, they are perfectly plausible.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you read through the judgment, some aspects of it when he speaks about people can run on the promenade, but once they put their feet in the sand of the beach, then it is breaking the law. I think a lot of people would say that some of the decisions were irrational. Why tell people what they can wear? If they're already at a shop, they can buy anything they want, as far as a sweater. So we understand some of those. I just want to read something from Professor Thuli Madonsela, where she said there would have been a lot to learn from this judgment if it were more clear, more concise, accurate, professionally reasoned, and persuasive. I'd be surprised in its current form if it survived the scrutiny of a higher court. Do you think, once again, government will have a leg to stand on in appealing it, in particular taking from what Prof. Thuli Madonsela has treated as well?
Unless some specialist focus on the sections other than that rationality test section, find ways in which to falter things there. But for me, that section, before that rationality test section, shows that those arguments are well, sort of the opinions of the judge, both the ones that find in favor of the state and against the state, have been well reasoned and well argued. So I mean, for a professional like Prof. Thuli Madonsela, perhaps she sees loopholes even there. If that is not the case, I would say her statement, for me, I would agree with it only in the section where the judge deals with the issue of the rationality test for specific regulations. Otherwise, elsewhere, I think the judge does exactly what she says should have been done. Yeah.
Political Analyst Ongama Mtimka, thank you very much indeed for joining us right now on the agenda. Thank you very much indeed as we get reaction far and wide with, of course, the North Gauteng High Court in Pretoria declaring level 4 and 3 national lockdown regulations unconstitutional and invalid. We're going to try and get as many more analysis on that as we go forward.